Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan V. Butler. First of all, Happy New Year. This is the first of these episodes for 2021. Hopefully you are all doing well. Hopefully the pandemic has not affected you as much as many of the folks around here. The Atlanta area is pretty heavy hit with the hospitals and whatnot right now, but hopefully 2021 will be treating you much better than in many cases 2020 did. This is actually a weird episode because this is a redo episode. Right? I'm replacing an old episode with this episode to cover the exact same thing again, because what I'm finding is that I've been rushing a lot when I've been recording lately, and in particular, on November 1st, I rushed through a lot. I got a bunch of stuff recorded, but they were all like little bursts where I was really rushing, like the From the Star Wars Home Video. When I say that at the beginning, like I feel like I'm racing to do it most of the time because I have limited time to record. And in order to get a ton of stuff in on November 1st, I feel like that was the day when the speed really kind of hit me. Because I recognized there were some things I realized, crap, I wish I would have mentioned that in some of the episodes for November 1st, all of which now have been edited and released, but it took 2 months to do so. And then also little errors creeping in, or things that I wasn't as specific on as I would like to have been. One error, for instance, I did an episode on the limited edition Revenge of the Sith soundtrack out of the UK/Europe, where I guess the person I bought it from slipped an incorrect little insert into it, and I just kind of took it for granted. It must have been part of it. Gee, why is there a typo on this? Only to realize later, thanks to the Yeti from Mars, I think is the name of the YouTube user, and Weeb, I know I'm saying your name wrong, Vanderwerk, over on the Star Wars Home Video Facebook group, both pointing out, no, that's got to have been from later. It looks like the seller just accidentally slipped it in when it shouldn't have been there. So I was able to take that episode, cut that little piece out, re-upload it. All good. You'd never know it had I not mentioned it unless you watched it within like the first day or so of it being up. We had another one that basically, in my rush to try to communicate, I tend to think of this as a show for American audiences. I know it's not all American audiences, but this started out as a show about my American Star Wars home video collection. The book is about US releases. So we get to a point where I'm sort of zipping through stuff, and I just kind of stick with the American terminology as I do it, which led to some imprecision, I guess you'd call it, on an episode that did lead to a bit of consternation over on the Home Video Facebook group, because there's sort of a fine line that's drawn here that's different than a fine line that's drawn in the UK. More about what exactly it was that happened on the Facebook group, if I feel the need to mention it here near the end, but I did want to address a topic that we have addressed before by replacing that episode with a look at it that actually mentions a couple of other things that were left out or that were clarified since the episode was released. So the product in question that we looked at was this. Okay? The 1987 release of A New Hope on VHS from the UK. Okay? Now this is frequently credited as the first retail release of this from the UK. We're going to see in a moment how that really is a question of terminology. When I did the episode originally on this, I simply referred to it as the first retail because it fits the Americanized definition of what we think of as a retail release. The UK, it's a little bit different in those early days as to how their terminology works, so some people had some issues with me saying so. So we'll address that. Suffice to say, this is the only version that has the all-time great movies on it, though there's a similar tagline on one just I think a year or two later. We have Star Wars, we have the regular artwork here, we have the silver background, we have the cast crew information and whatnot down here with our UK label. The spine has CBS Fox Video, Star Wars, then the rating, then stereo VHS and a product number. Clamshell, so nothing on top, bottom, or the other spine. Then the back here, 2 images. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, information about the film. They did fix Han Solo, but R2-D2 still has no dash. We have copyright legalese here. Runtime, which we will address. We have the rating and the UPC. Open it up. Then nothing here. Here you've got CBS Fox Video, Star Wars, a bunch of legalese, the product number, and the rating. Okay? Now, I said I would come back to a couple of things here. This, in UK terminology, we would call this the first sell-through version of A New Hope. Now, that also gets into a bit of a mess, so let me try to explain this. In the UK, you did have your video rental library type releases. This one is the beta version. This one is the VHS version of that, though I need to kind of replace mine because it's got all kinds of crap all over it. Okay, those are the rental versions, right? In early 1982. Then, as 82 proceeded, and then we got into 1983, you also saw the ability to purchase the film, except your purchasing of the film wasn't typically through just like what we think of in the U.S. as a standard retail release. When we think in the U.S. as a standard retail release, we think, okay, it's just available in stores, widely. If you want it, go buy it, right? For us, it's kind of like there's rental, there's retail, and anything else, like say mail order, like the 1995 Making of Star Wars VHS, they're the oddballs that don't really fit into those two main buckets. Well, in the UK, in some cases you could purchase early copies of A New Hope at specialty shops, but not widely, or by mail order, which seems to have been more common. In fact, there's a magazine in, I believe it was October of 82, called New Voyager that lets you order the retail releases of basically what this was for VHS, for Betamax, and for V2000 that we've also looked at here on the show as well. And then that same idea of specialty shop or mail order only continued into 83 with the CBS Fox release that we looked at. The New Voyager's order, I keep saying it as plural, the New Voyager magazine, one that you could order, appears to have had a white case as opposed to black. And I believe it was still 20th Century Fox up there on the top. But you could do those, or outside of New Voyager, just through other mail order, you could get, and we'll cover this in our next episode because we haven't yet, the original Laserdisc version, right? But not widely available in stores. Something you had to actually go to a specialty shop only to get, which they would order, or through mail order only. Now again, in the US, that's not really what we think of when we say retail. This was the first sell-through release in the UK. Sell-through meaning, again, widely available, just go out and buy it. So under what Americans usually say, especially today when we talk about retail releases, this would fit that bill. But in the UK, they were selling to consumers prior to it being widely available in stores. Even calling this sell-through is a little bit funky because sell-through has two meanings. One is sold to consumers. Well, this is always credited as the first sell-through release, and yet you could do mail order, and yet you could go to a specialty shop. So those should be called sell-through, shouldn't they? And yet they're not. You also have the fact that sell-through a lot of times is used more as a statistic than it is a feature of how it was sold, because sell-through also refers to the amount of a product that actually gets sold versus what's still sitting on the shelves as either a percentage or a proportion. So the terminology is kind of a mess, and it doesn't quite fit with a US definition. When I say retail, I tend to mean widely available. This was, the earlier stuff was not. But to be clear, if you wanted to go to a specialty shop or you wanted to do some kind of mail order, yes, you could get the Laserdisc or the V2000, you could get Beta, you could get VHS, you could get the 83 release through those means. If you were just a regular person in the UK who wanted to go out and buy a copy of A New Hope and you didn't want to have to hunt down one of the few specialty stores, if you didn't want to do mail order, if you wanted to just go into a store and buy the frickin' thing, 87 was your opportunity, 10 years after in theaters, 5 years after the initial release of a widely available retail copy in the US, and those specialty copies, or specialty store copies, whatever you want to call it, in the UK. So just wanted to clear that up. This is a really important moment in UK home video releases in that it was widely available, but be referred to more as a sell-through rather than just calling it retail. Because in the UK, they tend to take sell-through and mail order and specialty shop and kind of lump it into just that term retail early on, whereas in the US, we tend to think retail being widely available in stores, and then rental, and then everything else is kind of this weird middle ground, like mail order, that doesn't really fall into either bucket. I fell into using the more standardized American way of referring to it, which, again, bothered some folks. One person of which, actually, who helped spark this, ironically, isn't able to post on that home video Facebook group anymore because his way of objecting to the terminology here was to say, no, the first retail was in 82, this was not. At which point, it became a Trumpian argument. And whether you support or don't support Donald Trump, there's no denying his argumentative style, which tends to be, I'm going to say something that may or may not be true. And even if it is true or has a grain of truth, there needs to be more nuance, because under certain context it's true, under other context it's not. So you need to have a conversation about the nuance, but instead of actually having a conversation about the nuance, I will repeat the same unnuanced thing over and over again, beating you over the head with it, until finally, if you don't simply bow down and agree with me saying it over and over again, I will start to call you stupid, I will start to insult you, and so on. And we see that from a lot of political commentators, but Trump is a good example of that. That's kind of what this guy did, and when he got to the point of having done his insults enough times, he had to be banned from the group. So ironically, he didn't get to be part of the discussion between, say, me and Chris Clark and David Dumbbell later on about the specifics of the terminology, the new Voyager promotion, and trying to come up with a way for me to present this on the show in a more specific, more nuanced format than I had before. So again, 82, 83, specialty store, order through the mail. 87, just go into the store and buy it. Wide, what we would think was retail release, what they would call sell-through, even though it doesn't quite match the sell-through terminology used in the US, which would have included the earlier stuff. The other thing that I mentioned in that episode, when I first recorded it, the one that this is replacing, was I raised the question of the 118-minute runtime here. I thought, wait a second, does that mean that it's time compressed like a Laserdisc? In the book, I talk about the differences between PAL and NTSC. And I've noted about how there's the different resolutions, but also that it's a question of frame rate, right? That NTSC is basically 30 frames per second, 30 FPS, and PAL is 25. And I always heard, well, it just means that PAL is sped up. And I don't know why, but for some reason my brain never connected the idea that sped up literally meant sped up. Because for NTSC, you get this 24 frames per second original film. When they do the pull down, they convert it so that it's now 30 frames per second. Which in my mind is, okay, well, they've sped it up. That's not what sped it up meant in that. They literally meant sped it up when it came to PAL. Because for NTSC, it's a conversion process. 25 frames per second to 30. So that it still has the same runtime. Everything runs at the same speed that it would, well, in terms of viewing it, the way you're perceiving it, as it would have in the theater. With PAL being 25 frames per second versus 24 frames per second in theaters, they literally just speed it up without any conversion process. So instead of running at 24, it runs at 25, which means it moves a little more quickly, which means that the film winds up being about 4% faster, or 4% shorter, hence 118 minutes, and that's why the pitch raises, because the audio is also being played a little bit more quickly, and any audio played more quickly starts to raise in pitch. For some reason, I always just assumed that, because I just haven't taken the time to watch a whole lot of my VHS cassettes from the UK. I just got a region-free or an all-region player. I would pop it in, just watch the little bit that I needed to confirm what was on the cassette, and then just rewind it and stick it on the shelf so I don't destroy the tape at some point by having these old tapes in a machine. And for some reason, it just never really struck me when I was, popping in what few things I had from the UK into that region-free DVD player. For some reason, I thought that when they said sped up, they meant the same kind of conversion process took place as to turn 24 to 30 for NTSC. But no, it's literally just sped up 24 to 25, so everything runs a little bit faster, hence the 118-minute runtime there. So I wanted to address that as well. So think of this kind of as the imprecision and derp made a bit of a mess of the original version of this episode covering this. So rather than leave that and just have a big explanation of the things that bothered me about the episode in the description, I said, screw it, next time I record, I'm tossing it. I'm going to record something to take its place. So hopefully that cleared up any confusion for those who did see the original episode. Hopefully that wasn't a lot of extra crap in this episode of me talking that you didn't need if you didn't see the original episode. Trying to thread the needle here between the two different possible people watching this. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the force be with the home video viewers. Especially those who weren't derp when it came to the whole FPS PAL speed up thing. I don't know how that slipped by me, and I kept thinking it was a conversion.